It's time for our midweek snack and learn, everybody. I hope you're having a great Wednesday. Wednesday's always a strange day. It used to be hump day for me in the corporate world because it was so much closer to Friday. But now I really, really enjoy working. So it's kind of like not a hump day. It's a cool. We're in the middle of the week. What's next day? And I have brought on somebody that I think you're going to love hearing from today. It's Sonya Sigler. You pronounce it Sigler or Sigler?
Sigler.
Sigler. Okay, I had it totally wrong. And
Close.
I'll tell you a little bit about her because we're going to talk about a topic that I think, due to COVID in general, to workplace pressures, to the new variant and kind of how things have all shifted and changed in the last 2 or 3 weeks on us again, topic of frustration for people. But let me tell you a little bit about Sonya and then we'll jump in. So she's a best-selling author of Welcome to the Next Level, 3 Secrets to Becoming Unstuck, Take Action, and Rise Higher in Your Career. And also another book called What's Next for My Career, Your Guide to Deciding to Leave Your Stable Job to Follow Your Passion. I've been there. But she's also the founder and CEO of PractiGal. I love that name, PractiGal, and has been an IP and corporate lawyer for over 25 years. So she knows how to protect us and herself with the law, which is awesome. She has high energy and inspiring speaker. She facilitates workshops for corporate teams and women's network. Her workshops are designed to really inspire her audiences into action. So many of us have those goals we want to reach, making our dreams come true. And she focuses on how we get from dream to action, and also has a private coaching and consulting practice where she works with female founders, executives, entrepreneurs, legal professionals to help provide them with the tools and the connections that they need to succeed. We know, if nothing else, that without relationships, without connection, we don't go anywhere with our businesses or our careers, right, Sonya?
Exactly.
So thank you so much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about kind of your path to where you are now and exactly what you're doing for your clients. And then I'm going to dig in with some questions.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we're thrilled.
Every time we've chatted, we had such good conversations. So this will be no different.
Exactly.
I got my start as a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer since 8th grade. So I had this amazing U.S. history teacher, Mrs. Grinkmeyer, who taught us about the U.S. Constitution. And I thought it was such an elegant document, and I wanted to become a lawyer to uphold it.
Wow, 8th grade?
8th grade. So everything I did, I was focused on meeting that goal. What do I need to do to be a lawyer? In early 80s, I read an article about hot careers and in Silicon Valley. So we had moved from Indiana to Silicon Valley by that point. And I read this article and it said IP lawyer. And I was like, what is that? And I'm like, okay, copyright, trademarks, patents, licensing. I can do everything, to learn that. So that's what I did in law school. I had the opportunity to go to Oxford for the summer and study there. And so I studied with this professor, and you do this tutorial method, which means you read a bunch of stuff, you write a paper, and then you have to read your paper orally and defend it.
So, almost like a dissertation.
Yes. And so you did that for 6 weeks in a row. And so
no stress, not just a no stress little, degree.
Right. So I learned IP that way. And then I also went to summer school at Franklin Pierce Law Center in New Hampshire and took IP courses I couldn't fit in at Santa Clara with my work schedule and classes. So I did everything I could to become an IP lawyer. I did it. I got my first job at Sega, the video game company.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
It was so awesome. I was very popular with all my cousins.
I'll bet you were.
And funny enough, it was 30 years ago that I started there as an intern. And I can't believe it. I was like, it's January 1992. So I just decided to stop counting the years.
The fact that 1992 is 30 years ago is just
right. I don't know where the time went. But that's how I started as an IP lawyer at Sega. And about a year into the job, I was like, is this all there is? Am I going to repeat the same kind of negotiation over and over and over? because I would negotiate licenses, I'd negotiate letters of intent, all around copyright, all around licensing property like Disney and, Joe Montana, those kind of properties, and protecting it. So not only licensing in, but protecting things like Sonic the Hedgehog. So
Yeah.
very steeped in IP. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this all there is? So I realized I needed to get to the business side. I wanted to be more on the deal making side rather
There
than
you go.
papering side. So that was an important learning about myself. Led to frustration because I couldn't move. The general counsel at the time was like, over my dead body, is a lawyer going to leave the legal department? I didn't know I was caught in this political
quagmire. Yep.
That was a great way. So 3 years into my tenure, I got laid off. We were headed, and when I was hired there, the guy that hired me, Riley, he was so fabulous. He went on to be the general counsel of Sony for 30 years and just retired from there. So he told me when he interviewed me, he's like, don't get comfortable here. Video games are a cyclical industry, boom and bust. We can be riding high today and 2 months from now, be
good for him.
Closing the doors.
So he taught you about connections very early on, it sounds like.
He did. He was beautiful. He would give you enough rope to hang yourself and then pick you up off the floor and say, let's figure out what we can do better next time.
I love that. That is, to me, it sounds horrible, but it's a leadership trait that I've always admired.
He is a phenomenal leader. And in fact, I interviewed him for my third book, which is Set Yourself Up for Success, that hopefully will come out this year. And
Great.
He has some really interesting advice. Part of what he said was, you need to be able to leave your job to get what you want.
I love that.
Every guy I have interviewed has said that. You need to be able to leave your job to get what you want. And most women I know and coach and love aren't necessarily willing to do that. They want to keep what they have and they want to stick to it and then leap when the leap is like a even step as opposed to a higher leap.
Oh my gosh, that right there, people. I'm going to hone in on that for a second because that's a gold mine, right? Because I was in corporate as well, and it was the same thing. And I had a boss, a really good boss who was a great leader, male as well, tell me the same thing. And he said, Pam, women don't do this. He goes, I'm not going to let you get away with that. And, I know gender specific stereotypes are bad and all that. But in this particular case, in the corporate world, I think it's a real one. But what's happened is, as a lot of us have become entrepreneurs, we're following the same old behavior patterns. So is that something you help teach people out of when you pick them up?
Absolutely. So
Great.
What's interesting is I spent most of the last 20 years working with startups, helping them get off the ground, from writing a business plan to hiring people to digging up customers to honing in on who the right customer is, all of that good stuff. And one of the things I observed, because every startup I went to was run by a woman, founded by a woman, except for one. And so I say I serve women and enlightened progressive men, because
I serve women and John.
And that is who I serve, because that's who I know and love. But one of the important things that I discovered in that tenure of working with startups is that women hold themselves back. They are so risk averse. They don't actually take that step to call that customer. They don't take that step to take a risk, where men would be like, oh, I got to do this. That's what I got to do. So it's
interesting. I kind of want to dive in on that, because I don't know that it's risk taking as much as what Dave told me. This was the leader I have. He was the COO at Godiva for a while, and now he's working at another company. But anyway, he said, Pam, when I walked into this job where I worked at him, which is a company called Tasty Cake, he goes, I knew that the first thing we needed to do was redo our pension plan. He goes, Pam, I knew nothing about pension plans, but I went in there saying, I am a fully rounded CFO and I know how to do what I need to do. And yes, of course, we'll transfer this pension plan into what it needs to be. He goes, I didn't even know what the words meant at the time. He goes, a woman would not do that.
Yeah.
Because men in this point, and it's not all men and all women, I don't mean that, but because men as a rule are willing to go, I don't know that yet, but I'll learn it. And women are like very precise. Oh, I know how to do this, this, and this, but I'd have to learn that, but I could, and blah, blah, blah. Well, whoever's listening to that is like, person who knows it, person who has to learn it. And he said, Pam, there'd be no difference between you and me in that interview.
Right.
Except that you'd be honest and I'd bluff.
Yeah.
So it's a really, I don't know that it's risk aversion as much as this tendency towards kind of complete honesty
The
in
complete
our own
honesty.
self skills.
Yes. Yes. I run into CEOs who ask for my help because they're like, I need to up my confidence game. And
Yes.
it's not necessarily a confidence game. It's a, and I don't want to call it a bluffing game because
Right.
it's not a lie. It's really how to self promote.
It's a self-confidence game.
Yes. So there's a self confidence component. And then there's also what can I say to get someone else to buy into what I'm selling? And
Hmm.
so as a CEO, you're selling yourself and you're selling your products and your services.
Hmm.
People love to talk about their products and services. They don't talk about themselves. And
Hmm.
so I'm helping women put themselves in the picture
I love it.
and as a CEO and as a leader. So what I do is help them figure out what their worth is. So that confidence
And
and being
start to
able to
believe it.
own, and they believe it. Yes. So I'll give you a small example. A woman came to me. She's in Singapore. She left her job at a large company similar to Deloitte, that kind of management
Okay.
consulting.
Yep.
Super amazing. She was chief of staff. She just could get shit done and she was amazing at it. The minute she started her own business, she's like, oh, I don't know that. I don't want to talk about that. And so she came to me and she's like, can you help me up my confidence game? Like, absolutely. So what we did was like, look back at her leadership qualities back to when she was a kid. She led her sports team in high school and fired the coach and hired another one because she was an individual leader and winner, but they wanted to win as a team. So it was individual and team sport. So it was table tennis. So she wanted as a team to win, and so did the rest of the team. So she, as the team leader, led the effort to get the coach fired and hire a new one. Who does that at 16?
Nobody cares enough to do that at 16. I mean, that they care enough, but they don't, it's not like, it's not even care enough. That's the wrong answer. They don't even think
They
they
don't
can
know.
influence something. Right.
Right.
There's no way I can influence. That's adult stuff. I can't change that. It's
Yes.
throwing up your hands. It's the same answer. I
Yes.
love that.
Yes.
She had
So
that in her background and she still lacked confidence.
yes. And so what I had her do was just go back, give me every job you've ever had, tell me a little bit about it, why you had it, why you did it, why you didn't love it, why you did love it. Um, and we could see that leadership quality across the board. And so what was brilliant about this was then we could pick out stories from her experience as she's talking and in the selling process, she could bring those stories into the conversation to illustrate why she's the one to get this done. And she ended up winning. And I'm so thrilled with her and so proud of her. She ended up winning a grant of $50,000 to get her started in her business. So
Okay,
she's got
folks,
a startup grant.
time mark this on this Zoom because this is huge advice. You just got $1,000 an hour advice for free on this
Yeah.
Snack and Learn. If
Yep.
you have or think you have a confidence problem, go back through your life and pick the times that you've won or you feel like you've won or you felt like you've done something you may have never thought you could do and write them down for a couple reasons. One is it reminds you just how amazing you are. But number two, it pulls up, I never even thought of this, Sonya. It pulls up stories you can tell. And when you tell those stories, you're naturally going to come across differently. That is
And
brilliant.
people that you were talking to, customers, interviewers, those are the ones that remember those stories. And that's what puts you a notch above other candidates. So
And it's a whole different energy.
if you're interviewing for a job, if you're trying to get a promotion or a raise, if you are coming in as a founder and trying to get your company off the ground, people are going to remember those stories and that energy and
Yep.
that chutzpah, that get it done energy, whatever you want to call it. That's what they're going to remember. So I help
that.
people pull those stories together, put them in a coherent fashion. I'll give you an example. The reason that example is important for that woman who at 16 got her coach fired, I did something similar. So at 14, when I was a freshman in high school, I rallied a group of seniors together and other band members to get our band director fired. So I go in with 12 other people and meet with the principal and I speak because that's who I am. And so I wasn't afraid to rally these people. I'm like, this is the right thing to do. So it wasn't a matter of do I do this or not? It was about fairness, and it was about competency, and it was about, is this the best thing for our school? And is this who you want leading our music program and department? So I was like, of course I'm going to do this. Other people are like, oh, I can't do that. I can't rock the boat. I can't, like that whole mindset. And I help people tap into that. I can do this. Why not me?
In themselves, which
Yes.
is such a big separator of
Yeah.
the successful in particularly entrepreneurs from the others. Is I know when my business is doing well, it's because I'm confident, and when my business is not doing well, nothing's really not doing well, but when I'm not happy in it,
Yeah.
it's not really that the business has changed, that my confidence level's changed.
Something in your
And
mindset has changed. Yep.
and everybody, don't be fooled. This happens to everybody.
Everyone. Yes.
And having a coach that can kind of be in your corner and say, wait a minute, that's not you. You're letting yourself go down that rabbit hole, and it's not you. And here's why it's not you. I just love that. So I know you've got something really exciting coming up, and I'd love for you to talk about it because, number one, congratulations. It's your 4th year in business,
Yes.
and you're about to launch a course. So tell me a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah. So you mentioned the books. The second book, What's Next for My Career, I help people kind of peel back the layers of what they really want. So when I left Sega, I got laid off. I mentioned that earlier. I took a job at Intuit as corporate counsel. Great company, amazing department, led by a woman. Our legal department was almost all women. And it was fabulous and amazing and collaborative and collegial. And the company was fabulous. Scott Cook and Bill Campbell at the time, just amazing. And it was great for a year while everything was exciting and new. And then year 2, exciting and a little bit repetitive. And then by year 3, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to keep negotiating all these agreements with the banks to get their data into Quicken at the time. And oh my God, this is like more of the same. I got the same thing. It just took a little longer to get that repetitive work. I went on maternity leave and, finally had some time to soul search, came back to the same job, a little bit renewed. And then, oh my God, same thing. And then second maternity leave, I'm like, this is not for me. So I really had the time to think about it and peel back those layers of what I really wanted. And going back to the same kind of repetitive work was not it. And at the time I had an opportunity to go to a startup that was founded by the owner of Lego. And so there were 4 of us. So from the business development, writing the business plan stage to, finding customers, finding people it was
Love that.
Zynga 10 years before Zynga existed.
Wow.
So all of my patents and all of my own IP center around those ideas that we had at that company.
Love it.
That process that I went through, that process that I went through is what became What's Next for My Career. So really doing an assessment, really understanding what I wanted in the company culture or the company stage, what I was really good at in terms of what brain power I bring. So organizing chaos, being able to distill an enormous amount of information down to plain English for someone to be able to take action on. Bringing people together, making connections, not being afraid of picking up the phone to make a phone call. Like I spoke to the CEO of Mattel on I'm like, well, I need to talk to that person because that's who's going to make the decision. So that's who I found,
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
So I have a gene that is, I call it the, what do I call it?
Chutzpah gene.
That's right. I'm just not afraid to pick up the phone. And I'm not afraid to just figure it out. I call it the figure it out gene. So if I'm a CEO and I'm hiring, that's the kind of person I want in my company. So if people are having problems hiring right now, that's one thing to look at. Are they waiting to be told what to do, or are they willing to figure it out and come back and ask questions or get guidance or brainstorm or whatever? So that's one thing. But that process is what I wrote about in this book, What's Next for My Career.
Okay.
So I did a course that's 8 modules. So it follows the 4 A's method. So I talk about acknowledgement, I talk about assessment, I talk about awareness, and then I talk about action. So all those 4 A's I describe in the book in the process, and they're exercises to go along with it. So I I recorded everything and put it into a course so that people, I could serve more people, frankly, because it's hard to do everything one-on-one and get to enough people and help enough people. So that's
I
why
may
I
have
ended up
gotten these in the wrong order, but acknowledgement, assessment, awareness, and action, or did I get them awareness and assessment backwards?
Nope, it's perfect.
Great. Okay.
That is one thing I struggled with when I wrote the book was, do I do assessment first and then acknowledgement, or really acknowledgement and then assessment? So I went back and forth. You know that process of writing the book.
Yes. Yep. I love it. So that's great. So you walk people through this in the course then?
I do, exactly. So the acknowledgement is all about the fears, facing those fears, just acknowledging them, naming them. I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of putting myself out there. I'm afraid
Failing,
of
money, all the things.
failing. I'm all of it. Yes. So I talk about that and really just naming it. I mean, that's how people get into imposter syndrome. So they're not feeling like they have the experience, or they shouldn't be there, or someone's going to find out I'm a fraud. The fraud police are going to show up, all that good stuff.
Yep.
Part of this is peeling back those layers to say, I have the experience. I did go to law school. I actually got a business degree. I've spent 20 years with startups. I know what I'm talking about. So those reminders, and keeping a kudos file of all the good stuff people have said about you, or keeping the achievements and accomplishments. I never did that. And so I think that's one of the reasons I felt so unsatisfied in that 5-year period, is because I didn't have something to look back on to say, wow, I did all this. Yep. I was there at the launch of the online banking. I was the lawyer that supported all of that. So someone asked me, how many banks did you negotiate with? I'm like, oh, it was probably 50 or 60 different banks. And I was like, so when you start quantifying the work, or when you start looking at like, oh, hey, I got an agreement signed with Citibank today, they are not the easiest to negotiate with. So
no, that's amazing.
When you start to put those little checks down and quantify it, it's like, wow. Then I have something I can look back at and say, I did this. I did an amazing amount. It wasn't until 2011, so how long had I been a lawyer by then? Quite a while, where I had built a company to about 25 million, a little over 25 million, sold it to Ernst & Young, so sold myself out of a job. I had to go find something else. I was cleaning out my office, and I was the company lawyer and kind of administrative officer. I did all the operations and finance. So I led all that. So I had a lot of records. I had a big 4-drawer filing cabinet with big, those fireproof cabinets. And so as I was going through that and tossing stuff and putting it into the shredder bin, I was like, oh, I didn't remember that. And so I just started keeping a list of what did I do in those 9 years that I was there. And so I wrote it all down, and it kind of striated out into 4 groups: legal, which was my title; finance, which also was my title; operations, which became my title when we hired a reliable finance person; and marketing and sales. And so when I looked at all those skills, I was like, wow.
I know how to run a business.
Right. And so that's when I was like, I need to go somewhere I can start my own business.
Love it.
So, and I didn't come to that realization. A headhunter was like, it sounds like you need to be CEO somewhere. Like you've done all that. It wasn't me that said that. It was a headhunter, because I was like getting interviews, but I wasn't getting second interviews or offers. And I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Wrong job.
That shouldn't be happening. It was not a match. It was not a match.
And that was I always thought that the hardest move for me was going from controller to CFO, because it's a very different job. It's
very strategic.
It's real leadership. You're learning to trust the team, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
But the real hard move was CFO to CEO, because I never believed I was a CEO, despite the fact that I had people in my ear going, Pam, this is it. This is all it is.
This is a hop. It's not a jump, right?
Bingo. And finally registered at some point, and my paradigm shifted. But there are a ton of people out there. I can feel that gap, because I felt it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. I love it. All right.
But I think when you can look at your experience and say, oh, who do I respect as a CEO and as a leader? May not be CEO title, but as an amazing leader, like Riley, the guy that hired me at Sega and became general counsel at Sony, he's an amazing leader. He is the quiet, supportive type. He's not the out there, effusive, like,
Gregarious.
I'm much more the extrovert. He's a very amazing introvert leader. And there's both types, and both types are necessary. But all of that experience and all of that learning is what I put into that book and course. And I think it's important to make it available to people. Like, I've been quiet about it for the last year. So I took a group through it. I recorded it all, and I've been quiet about it for the last year. And I was like, oh, you know what? I need to just tell people
Done
about
being quiet about this. This is really required.
it. Yes.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So folks, the link I've now dropped into the comments so that if you're interested in this, go take a peek there. If you have questions for Sonya, we're gifted that she's in our group and we'll be willing to answer them about anything along this topic. If you're struggling kind of where you are in your career right now, and I kind of alluded that we talk about frustration, and I know that a lot of employees had a whole different perspective on working in corporate America during COVID.
Yeah.
Because number one, employers' real motives shone very quickly through COVID. And a lot of people realized they were working for businesses and companies that didn't share their value system at all. The second thing is some companies really stepped up. And even with that, people are like, I kind of like the freedom of this work at home thing. And now they're insisting on, well, not now, but before Omicron, insisting on people coming back. But add on top of that, all this pressure, noise, fear, unknown around COVID. And people are really at this point of high frustration. So I think it's a really good time to be asking these kind of questions about your career. And I don't care what age you are. I don't care if you're what generation you are.
It is never too late to be doing what you want to be doing. It's never
too early.
That's right.
It's never too early or late. So I really hope you kind of follow on here with your questions, whether you're watching live or on replay. We're thrilled you're here. Sonia's a real expert on this. I don't know if you listened to the subtleties during this, but I only pointed out a couple of nuggets. I'm going to go back and listen to this again because I know there's a bunch of stuff I can apply as well. Sonya, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Pam. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
And everybody enjoyed the rest of the week. We look forward to the next Snack and Learn. Take care.